welcome to this National MS Education and Awareness Month teleconference hosted by MS Focus, the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, and made possible with support from EMD Serono, Genentech, Mylan, and Sanofi Genzyme. I'm your host, Chris Hudspeth. I'm the MS Focus Radio Program Manager, and I'm joined by Pietrangelo, who will be talking about Living with MS, 5 Steps Toward Empowerment. There are slides accompanying this presentation, and at the end of the presentation, there will be a brief question and answer discussion. To view the slides and go to submit your questions via chat, please connect to the conference online. Go to readytalk.com and join with the access code 7766805. That's readytalk.com. Click join and use the access code 7766805. We encourage you to submit your questions as we go, and we'll answer those questions for you at the end of the talk. Now, let me introduce our speaker. Anne is a freelance writer and health reporter whose work can be found on healthline.com and care2.com and other websites around the web. She's the author of 2 memoirs, No More Sex, Living, Laughing, and Loving Despite Multiple Sclerosis, and Catch That Look, Living, Laughing, and Loving Despite Triple-Negative Breast Cancer. She's a former Multiple Sclerosis Foundation ambassador in Virginia, and she's currently working on a book of short stories about the moments of our lives that make us who we are. Anne, and by extension her husband Jim, have been living with MS for more than 15 years. Anne, thank you so much for being patient and being with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you for having me, Chris. I'm glad to get started. It's so nice to be here with the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation during MS Awareness Month. I'm just thrilled to be part of this Flex Your MS Muscle teleconference series. It's such a great theme. And thank you to everyone listening in, and thank you for your patience as well. It's so important for people with MS to hear from each other and to share what we've learned along the way. I've certainly learned a lot from speaking with people with MS over the years. It's amazing how often you think, wow, so it's not just me. So let me begin by saying that I'm not a doctor or a healthcare provider. I'm a writer and health journalist who happens to have MS. I know firsthand how drastically this disease can alter your life. And I know how drastically it can alter the lives of the people who love you. It's hard to believe because it's still so fresh in my mind. But it's been more than 15 years since I got that diagnosis, and even longer since symptoms started complicating things. And like each of you listening in, my story of life with MS is unique. I can only tell my story. You may be able to relate to some of it. I hope it helps in some small way, the same way that your story can help someone else. One of the first things I learned about MS is that it's different for everybody, and it's different from year to year, month to month, and sometimes even from day to day. As you all know, living with a chronic condition like MS has its challenges, but you are not powerless in the face of those challenges. Next slide, please. Tonight we'll focus on 5 areas where you can empower yourself to live your best life with MS. And if I come down with a case of word salad along the way, I know this is a group that will relate. Those 5 things are, number 1, acceptance. Because you can't deal effectively with something if you don't acknowledge it for what it is. Number 2 is self-education. Because the more you know, the more you can advocate for yourself, make good decisions, and learn to live with MS. The third is about making accommodations, because it's smart to take advantage of whatever tools are available to help you keep doing the things that matter to you. The fourth is about protecting your overall health, because the stronger and healthier you are overall, the better able you are to manage MS, and you just might lower the chances of developing other health problems. And nobody needs that. And lastly, and this is my favorite part, we'll talk about not letting yourself get pushed around, because having a chronic disease seems to give people license to tell you what you should do and how you should handle things, even if you didn't ask. But even when someone means well and you don't want to hurt their feelings, it's okay to stand up for yourself. And then after that, if you have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them or refer you to someone who can. Next slide, please. So the first area of empowerment I'd like to address is acceptance. Slide, please. I'll continue. Okay. At first blush, that may not sound like empowerment, but stick with me on this. And it probably applies more to people who are recently diagnosed. For many of us, the diagnosis of MS was a long time coming. There was a series of tests and most likely a series of doctors. Somewhere along the way, somebody probably questioned whether your symptoms were real or imagined. And at times, you might have even doubted yourself. There was a second opinion, or maybe even a third. Nobody wants to have MS, so you try not to get ahead of yourself or the doctors who are trying to figure it all out. There are a lot of what ifs and hopes that you have something that can be cured, something you can eventually file away in your past. When the day of diagnosis finally arrives, wow, what an enormous sense of relief. Finally, your symptoms have been acknowledged for what they are. I knew I wasn't crazy, you might have thought. I knew it wasn't all in my head. You felt vindicated. But that feeling doesn't generally last long. After that initial flood of relief, things start to get complicated again. Now you know you have this thing, and it's never going to leave you. That takes some getting used to. And there's a whole new list of things to deal with. For example, your neurologist wants you to make treatment decisions. So you need to get a handle on a bunch of different drugs, what they're supposed to do, potential side effects, not to mention trying to figure out what health insurance may or may not cover and how you're going to get the medicines you need. There's a lot to take in. And you probably have to tell some people. Maybe it's your parents or children, perhaps a spouse or partner, a worried niece or nephew, a friend or two. Depending on your circumstances, this can be an emotionally draining process. Then you wonder if you should share your diagnosis with coworkers or your boss and what the potential implications of that are. And will you be able to continue working at all? And at that point, the financial burden of life with MS hits you like a ton of bricks. It's impossible to face these issues with any clarity if you're in denial. There's no way around it but to accept this new reality. But please don't get me wrong. Acceptance is not all about gloom and doom. There's no woe is me factor involved here. It says absolutely nothing about how MS will affect your life because it is so different for everybody. Acceptance is not about giving in. It's about stepping up. It's about taking control and choosing how you're going to respond to the challenges of MS. It's about getting on with your life. It is about empowerment. MS will always be with you. It's part of your life now. But it is most definitely not the most important part of who you are. Of course, it seems that way at first because there's so much to figure out, and that takes time and energy and a whole lot of space in your brain. Coping with all of this while trying to navigate life with a body that refuses to cooperate, well, it's downright exasperating. I'm not one of those people who will tell you that you can cure your MS with a positive attitude. But I will tell you that your attitude, that is how you choose to deal with MS in your life, is crucial to coping with MS, both emotionally and physically. As frustrating and overwhelming as life with MS is at times, and there's no question that it is, you can't let yourself become all about MS. You can't lose the core of who you are to this disease. That's how MS wins. So try to identify your personal strengths, we all have them, and use them to the best of your ability. Find a way to participate in things that matter to you if you can, or cultivate new opportunities and find new ways of being you. There is life after a diagnosis of MS. It's different from the life you had before, and certainly different from the life you anticipated. But MS does not define you. Acceptance. It's the key to moving forward. MS is what it is. We all have our own version of it, from mild to severe and everything in between. But since we do have MS, we do owe it to ourselves not to get stuck in place, but to carry on as best we can. There's a whole lot of living yet to do. Next slide, please. The second way you can empower yourself is through education. This is so important. Whether you've recently gotten the diagnosis or if you're still working toward one, you need to be proactive. To educate yourself about what MS really is, not what you've heard it is or what you think it might be. And things change quickly in the world of medical research. And MS symptoms can change even faster. It's a process. So no matter how long you've had MS, we should never really consider our education complete. Learn all you can about it and encourage the people closest to you to do the same. Now, this process starts with your doctors. Sure, you are a patient, but you can also be a partner. You have a chronic illness, so you have every right to and should take an active role in your own health care. Each of us with MS has our own symptoms and our own unique concerns. So doctors can't always anticipate our questions. That's why preparing for appointments is so helpful. Make a list of questions and take notes while you're there. This is especially important early on when everything is so new. You can even bring someone in with you to help out. Good doctors don't have a problem with that. In between visits, it may help to keep a journal. Note the details of your symptoms so you won't forget to mention them. Ask questions about disease-modifying drugs and medicines to treat symptoms. What is the goal of the treatment? How will you take the medication? What are the potential side effects? Will you need follow-up testing? You're within your rights to ask these questions and get answers that make sense to you so you can make informed decisions. If your neurologist is frequently dismissive and won't take your concerns seriously, start looking for a new neurologist. You'll also probably do a lot of research online. There's a world of valuable information out there. There's also a lot of misinformation, not to mention scam artists offering miracles and magic cures. You have to sift through a lot of questionable material to get to the good stuff. Think twice about articles that don't provide information about the author or websites with no about section. Anyone can say studies prove one thing or another, but if an article doesn't link to them or tell where they were published so you can look at the study yourself, then don't take them at their word. As a health writer, I can tell you that we writers don't always have a say in the photos or the headlines that go with our articles, so don't take them to heart. If you haven't read the full piece, you don't have the whole story. Look for sources you can trust. Advocacy organizations like the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation, the National MS Society, and the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America are all good places to start. Educational institutions and hospitals are also great resources. So are websites with medically reviewed articles. And if you question information you find online, ask your doctor if there's anything to it. I haven't been to medical school, so I value the input of those who have. And I've learned that by doing my own research, I can ask the right questions of doctors. Next slide, please. But beyond the facts and the stats and the medical information about the disease itself, living with MS is another matter entirely, and it's just as important. One way to get a handle on that is to reach out to other people who have MS, because they can share really great insights about coping with the disease and the things that come up on a day-to-day basis. We can offer each other tips and point out some of those reputable sources for educational materials, patient assistance programs, and managing daily symptoms. Sometimes it helps just to know that you're not alone in this thing. You might even find yourself in a position where you can help someone else. And that's a hugely empowering feeling, believe me. And there are a lot of ways you can do this. For some people, nothing beats an in-person meeting. Getting face-to-face might help you feel more connected, and you might enjoy the social component. If you can't find a support group where you live, you can start your own through the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation or other advocacy organizations. If you're not comfortable with that, or you can't manage to get to meetings, there are plenty of online groups and forums where you can share your thoughts and ask questions. And let's not forget about the wide world of apps. Health apps are booming these days. New ones are popping up every day. The Multiple Sclerosis Foundation has an app. So do the National MS Society and the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America. And there are quite a few more to choose from that provide tons of information, and some help put you in touch with other people with MS. At the same time, you don't want to get carried away comparing your MS to anyone else's, because as much as we have in common, we're definitely not all the same. We have different symptoms, different circumstances, and even different options for our health care. What treatments we choose, how old we are, whether or not we have other health issues, all these things make a difference. So we shouldn't get too hung up on how we stack up to others. I haven't heard of anyone else with a story quite like my own. For those first 7 or 8 years of MS, I had 3 or 4 relapses every year, with precious little remission time in between. My neurologist at the time suggested that I was well on my way to transitioning to progressive MS, and that's exactly how it felt. But then something strange happened. I went a good 6 months without a relapse. In fact, I regained a lot of strength I'd lost along the way. And I even found myself dancing in a conga line at a wedding. It was amazing and maybe a little surreal. Then the other shoe dropped. I found out I had cancer. My oncologist gave a lot of consideration to MS when he came up with a treatment plan. The thing is, I got through 10 months of cancer treatment without an MS relapse, and my MS hasn't been the same since. I still have occasional relapses, but they're much milder and a world away from where I was 10 years ago. Neither my neurologist nor my oncologist cared to speculate on the reasons why, but I'm sharing this because I want you to know that MS is indeed a strange thing. None of us knows for sure where we're going or why MS does the things it does, but it doesn't always get worse. I don't know how long my good fortune will hold out, but I take advantage of it, and I'm grateful for it every single day. Next slide, please. The third area I'd like to address is making accommodations. And I can get pretty passionate about this topic. I can't tell you how much it bothers me when I hear someone say that they won't use a walker or a cane or a wheelchair because they don't want to be seen that way. Why shortchange yourself? The fact is, I once felt the same way, but now I know better. Even before the diagnosis, symptoms of MS had already changed everything for me and for my husband, Jim, as it does for a lot of people caught up in that ripple effect. We both had major adjustments to make, not because of the diagnosis, but because of the symptoms that were getting in the way of normal activity, and we knew we had to do something about it. Early on, one of my biggest problems was walking. My legs just weren't listening to my brain, and I had no sense of balance. Honestly, I was at a loss for what to do. Then one day, Jim came home with a cane. You know, one of those thick metal canes you get at the drugstore that make that horrible clacking sound as it hits the floor. Let me tell you, I cringed. But he wasn't trying to make a fashion statement. He just wanted me to test it out, and he figured I wouldn't do it on my own. He was right about that. So I took it for a spin around the house, and it did help. A lot. I was pretty impressed with the difference it made. So I started searching online for a cane I could feel good about. Something inconspicuous. Something that would fly under the radar. At the time, I had some silly notion that I was too young to use a cane, and I just didn't want to be noticed. I was going for that, fade into the wallpaper kind of look. Well, Jim was having none of that. He didn't hesitate to set me straight. If you're going to use a cane, he said, then use a cane. His theory was that if there's something you can use that will help you get through the day, then you should go all in on it. Boy, was he right. That's how I ended up with a wild-looking Paisley cane. And as soon as I realized how much that cane could help me get around in public, I was all in. It wasn't about giving in or giving up. It was about taking charge of MS. That cane saw me through some very trying times. I have quite the cane collection these days, even though my MS has been fairly tame for the last several years. But with MS being the unpredictable thing it is, I still keep a cane in the car, because you just never know, do you? Over the years, we found a number of other things to help manage life with MS. A lightweight portable wheelchair for longer excursions. A handicap parking placard so I could continue to run errands by myself. A special easy-to-hold pen so I could write legibly. A shower chair for those days when standing more than a few minutes at a time was a problem. A tall stool in the kitchen so I could sit while chopping veggies or washing the dishes. Some of my most recent acquisitions have nothing to do with MS, but so what? Right now I'm using a special chair pillow that helps me sit straight and not strain my back. And I have a migraine hat that, although it looks rather ridiculous and totally messes up my hair, helps relieve head pain. They all have a job to do. They keep me doing what I need to do. And I don't regret using them one bit. For you, it might be a cooling vest, or a wheelchair ramp, or assistive technologies to help with vision or using a computer. Using any of these things doesn't mean you've quit trying. Quite the contrary. It means you're finding solutions and making adjustments, signs that you're taking control over your own life. Whatever you need, why not use it? Why not take advantage of everything at your disposal so that you can continue to function as independently as possible? If you have trouble finding or paying for assistive devices or technologies, check out the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation Assistance Programs at msfocus.org. Contact the National MS Society or the Multiple Sclerosis Association of America. Go to some of those MS forums or apps and ask other people with MS how they did it. Ask your doctor. And definitely check with your health insurer to find out what's covered and what's not. MS also interferes with work. Before I even knew it was wrong with me, symptoms forced me to transition from full-time to part-time work. And I kept up with that for a few more years before transitioning once again to working full-time, but now from home. Depending on the type of work you do, you might be able to get what they call reasonable accommodations on the job. That might be a new parking space, grab bars in the bathroom, fewer hours, etc. But before you do that, it's a good idea to learn about your rights under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA. You can get more information about that at ada.gov. Another excellent resource for this is the Job Accommodation Network, or JAN, at askjan.org. There you can find information about job accommodations for a variety of conditions with a section specifically for people with MS. One of the more troublesome aspects of living with MS is the variability. You never know when you put that special day on your planning calendar how you're going to feel on that day, if your legs will work, if you'll be super fatigued, if those muscle spasms will drive you to distraction. So making accommodations isn't limited to buying products to help you out. Another way of making accommodations is allowing for flexibility. Assume that you're going to go to that event you put on the calendar and that you're going to have a good time. But allow for the fact that your body may have other ideas on that particular day. If someone is depending on you to participate in something important, it's okay to give them a heads up so that they're not taken by surprise. Whenever possible, having a plan B in place, just in case, makes a lot of sense. If things don't work out quite the way you wanted, cut yourself some slack. Don't let it crush your spirit. Some people with MS can climb mountains and run marathons. And some have lost the use of their legs or their vision. Most of us fall somewhere in between. But whatever our situation, we can all make changes to enhance our lives. Next slide, please. So number 4 is about protecting your overall health. When it comes to health, there is a tendency to focus on the MS. Because the range of symptoms is seemingly without end, and they can change as often as you change your socks, it's easy to blame every new symptom on MS. It's easy to dismiss things that should raise a warning flag. And it's easy to let fatigue and other symptoms keep us from exercising or taking the time to eat right. But having MS doesn't mean we can't develop other health problems. I'm sure many of us have more than one chronic condition, plus an occasional bout of something else. So taking care of your health beyond having MS is vital. There's no specific diet for people with MS, but of course, what we eat plays a huge role in how we feel on a daily basis. Eating the wrong foods certainly doesn't help with MS fatigue. I know how I feel an hour after eating a nutritious meal compared to how I feel an hour after eating a fast food meal when I'm on a road trip. And once you get in the habit of eating well, the difference in how you feel is even more pronounced. According to the Mayo Clinic, one of those reputable sources I was talking about, skipping meals can contribute to those low energy levels most of us have. And not getting enough vitamins and minerals can make symptoms of MS worse. Too much weight gain can lead to more health problems. And if you have balance and coordination issues, alcohol will only make matters worse. So generally speaking, people with MS should strive for a balanced, low-fat, high-fiber diet, avoid highly processed foods, and go easy on the alcohol. Depending on any other health issues you might have, you may need a more specific diet or maybe some dietary supplements. But that's a conversation you should have with your doctor. Perhaps even more difficult than sticking to a good diet is physical activity. It's so hard to imagine yourself exercising when you can't stand up long enough to shower or can't make it across the length of your home without stopping to rest. I know, I've been there. there's always a way to exercise a little bit. The Mayo Clinic says that for people with MS, the benefits of exercise far outweigh the challenges, as long as you exercise in moderation. If your symptoms tend to get worse when you're overheated, you'll want to be careful not to overdo. You can also look into getting a cooling vest or some of the other cooling products made for people with MS. The Multiple Sclerosis Foundation has a cooling program that offers some of these products free of charge, and you can fill out an application on the website. Swimming, pool exercises, and water aerobics, they're all great sources of exercise because the water makes it so much easier to move while keeping you from overheating. If you have coexisting conditions, it's a good idea to talk to your doctor about which exercises would be best, or if maybe physical therapy is the way to go. Another way to take care of your overall health is to reduce stress, at least wherever that's possible. Because life being what it is, you can't eliminate all stress, right? Meditation, deep breathing exercises, and Tai Chi are all great ways to get mind and body in tune. And there are yoga programs designed specifically for people with MS, including many poses you can do while sitting in a chair or even from a bed. You can join a class, or you can find yoga apps or online classes. The MS Focus Lending Library has some yoga selections you can try out for free. And lastly, the neurologist shouldn't be the only doctor on your team. Be sure to visit with your primary care doctor at least once a year for regular physical and discuss any new symptoms, because they may not be related to MS. Your primary care physician can also answer your questions about diet and exercise, or refer you to physical therapists, dietitians, or to other resources in your area. Next slide, please. And number 5 on the empowerment list is, don't let anybody push you around. Because you know what comes with MS? Presumptuousness. It's like a side effect of MS. But instead of affecting you, it affects the people around you. It can come from friends, family, acquaintances, even total strangers. Anyone with a chronic illness knows exactly what I'm talking about. I first encountered this when I started using that cane in public. Oh, it got me plenty of attention. Occasional compliments, sure. But more often, I got funny looks or lecturing I didn't ask for. I got a whole world of unsolicited advice about why I shouldn't be using a cane at all. It'll make you dependent, they said. You won't be able to get along without it ever again. Learn to walk without it. You're too young. Don't give up. I remember one time being introduced to someone this way. This is Anne. She has MS. Bad enough, right? But then this guy I just met 2 seconds ago proceeds to tell me that I should ditch the cane. And he tells me a story about that time he had a leg injury and refused to use a cane, and he healed up just fine, so look at him now. You'll heal faster without a crutch, he said. Seriously. Some woefully misinformed people actually tried to make me feel bad about using a cane. That guy definitely won the prize for most presumptuous, though. I've needed a wheelchair. I've ridden on those clunky motorized vehicles that help you get to your gate at the airport. I've parked in the handicapped parking space. And let me tell you, the naysayers got it all wrong. They were way off. These things helped give me freedom. They helped me remain active. And when symptoms eased up, I was thrilled to put them away and strike out on my own again. They didn't make me overly dependent or harm me in the least. I'm so glad I didn't listen to those people. I just wish I'd been strong enough earlier on to respond with confidence. Here's another situation I bet a lot of you can relate to. You're at a wedding or a party, and people just insist that you dance despite your assertion that you are physically unable to. Come on, you can do it. I won't let you fall. Don't be such a party pooper. They might even grab your arm and attempt to physically drag you onto the dance floor. It took me a long time to find my voice when it came to comments about the cane and the weird introductions as the lady with the cane or the lady with MS. The dancing thing, that woke me out of my aversion to confrontation. I would no longer allow myself to be lectured to or pushed around. I started speaking up for myself, telling people in no uncertain terms that I know what's best for me. I started explaining the concept of chair dancing. I bet you all know something about that. Until they were too bored to bother anymore. But you know what? You really don't owe anyone an explanation for why you take a certain medication or why you don't take one. You don't have to justify your use of a wheelchair or a handicap parking permit or the need for a nap. Whether you've got relapsing MS or progressive MS, nobody understands your body, your mind, your life the way you do. So don't be intimidated by what others think of you. Now, you can use these opportunities to educate those people if you want to, but not everyone is interested in knowing more, and that's okay. They really don't have to understand everything about MS, but they do have to allow that you know yourself better than they do. But you've got a positive attitude, right? It's usually one of the first things someone says when you have an illness. You can beat this with a positive attitude, they'll tell you. I think I have a positive attitude. And when I say that, I don't mean I'm always sunshine and roses. I'm not even close. But I don't strive for that. Because being human means that sometimes you're scared. Sometimes you're angry. Sometimes you're sad. Sometimes you're just plain frustrated. You can experience all these feelings and still be an optimistic, positive, basically happy person. When my hair was growing back after chemotherapy, it came in all weird and wild. I had a heck of a time trying to get it under control. Talking about that one day, I was told that I should just be grateful I'm alive at all. Yes, as if I needed to be told that it's better to be alive with crazy hair than not to be alive. As if that thought hadn't occurred to me before. What that person completely missed was that talking about my bad hair day was a really healthy sign. It meant I was not consumed with thoughts of cancer or dying. It meant I was having a perfectly normal day, just like a lot of other people. Having a chronic illness doesn't infuse you with some newfound wisdom that puts you above everyday aggravations. You still get to be a whole person. You're allowed to have a bad day or to talk about a trivial but very human everyday moment. And you're allowed to say so. After all, you have to deal with MS plus everything else that comes with life on planet Earth. Of course it helps to try to focus on the brighter side of things. But you can't be in that place every moment. And you're in no way obligated to put on a happy face if that's not how you feel. Nobody is positive all the time. Having a positive attitude doesn't mean you have to ignore reality. For me, it means hoping for the best, preparing for the worst, and facing whatever comes to the best of your ability and not allowing anyone to push you around. Next slide, please. In closing, while I like to talk about empowerment, I don't want to minimize the realities of MS. it's a big deal. It's a huge, lifelong deal. Relapsing or progressive, you never know what's around the corner. But we do what we can to empower ourselves. Accept MS for what it is. Learn all you can. Make accommodations. Protect your overall health. And don't let yourself get pushed around. Today will never come around again, so we'd better make the most of it. Since my diagnosis, I've had some truly devastating lows and some mind-blowing highs. I've even managed to fulfill a few dreams. And I'm not done yet. Neither are you. You have MS, but you are so much more than MS. And you can take that to heart. Next slide, please. So if you'd like to get in touch with me after the teleconference concludes, please feel free to email me at ann@webcamp1.com. That's ANN@WEBCAMPONE.com. Or contact me through my website at annpietrangelo.com or follow me on Twitter. And if you're interested in my book about living with MS, it's called No More Sex. That's spelled SECS. And it's available in the MSF Lending Library on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble. And I thank you all very much for listening in. And now I'll turn it back to you, Chris.
Thank you so much, Ann, for sharing your story and being part of our bigger MS Focus community and family. And we really appreciate you joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
As we mentioned earlier, if you would like to ask a question, you do need to connect online. You'll go to readytalk.com, click Join Meeting, and use the access code 7766805. And for those who are already online, if you have a question for Ann, please use the blue online chat button to submit your question now. And Casey's on part of the mix tonight. We had some issues connecting, and she's participating. So she's going to send me the questions as they come in, and I will ask. But I would like to start with a question for myself. How do you, the caregivers that are in our lives who help manage, who have to manage their own lives and assist with ours, what would you say to someone who is a caregiver, who might be listening, or their family member might be listening, to stay encouraged? What are some things Jim might do to facilitate that?
Well, I would say one of the most important things for a caregiver to do is, just like the person with MS, is to get educated about MS, because the more the caregiver knows, the better they'll feel about their role in it and what they can do. And I know that they do also have support systems in place for caregivers. There's lots of caregiver support online and organizations specifically for caregivers. And I would say if the caregiver is a spouse, attending doctor's appointments and attending the support group meetings might also be very helpful.
And you had mentioned earlier on about looking up information online. One of the topics that comes up many times when we do talks, especially from doctors, is the mention of Dr. Google and people using the internet because the information is out there. And as you mentioned earlier, maybe finding information that isn't effective, but people might not believe their doctor. How do you kind of rectify that with a doctor who knows what they're talking about and doing, but you have a certain belief system yourself? How do you get that conversation started?
That's a tough one, Chris. That really is, because I do value the opinions of medical professionals, but I know there are, for instance, a lot of complementary therapies for MS, which may be perfectly reasonable to do in conjunction with your regular medical care. But I would say that whatever you're interested in trying, please do a lot of research and make sure there are no harmful side effects to whatever therapy you're thinking of doing. Just please check with your doctor and make sure that you're not causing any harm along the way.
Great. And one final question for me is if you have, mentioning that you have two medical conditions, I've had two medical conditions. There are a lot of people who feel life is unfair, who get very depressed. Why is this happening to me? How did you pull yourself out? Not that you went through that, but how would you suggest some resources for people to pull themselves out of that?
I would definitely recommend, first of all, support groups. I mean, I'm not personally a support group person, in-person support group person, but I did take part in online support systems. But I think if you are a person who can do the support groups, that's really a good idea. I would suggest that you ask your doctor about therapists, because I know that there are therapists who specialize in talking people through having medical conditions. And I would say definitely reach out for help. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't isolate yourself. That's the most important thing. Just don't let yourself get isolated, and try to maintain a good support system. See your friends, see your family. Don't hold up in your house because you're depressed over your health.
When people are first diagnosed, where they can, some resources to start looking at online that they could go to, maybe your website.
And I would say, and when you're first diagnosed, I say take a deep breath, because you don't have to make every decision today. It's not life and death today. So just try to calm yourself and think rationally. The first places I went to, and it was on the recommendation of my neurologist, were the advocacy organizations, the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation and the MS Society. That they're excellent places to start, and they can send you off. You follow the links on their website, and they send you off into a world of great information. But I think the biggest piece of advice I would give is, yes, just relax, stay calm. It's not an emergency. You have some time to think about your options and how you're going to handle life with MS.
Okay, and we do have a question that's come in from Elizabeth. She would like to know, how do you commit to a treatment plan without questioning yourself or changing your mind frequently?
How do you commit? That is a very good question, because I think we all go to this, we all have our own way of handling these things. I think, first of all, when you're talking about the disease-modifying drugs, there's a lot more today than there were when I was first diagnosed. So you really have to take the time and work through each one with your doctor, the potential pros and cons, so that you understand what you're in for, how you're going to take this medicine, how it can affect you on a day-to-day basis, what follow-up are you going to need. Because the more you know going in, when you make that decision, the better you'll be able to commit to it and stick with it. Because I think one of the most important things about these therapies is once you choose one, you do have to stick with it. Compliance is everything. If you can't take the medicine on schedule when you're supposed to, it's probably not going to do what it's supposed to do. So that would be my advice. Do the research, talk it through with your doctor so you understand what you're getting into.
Perfect. I'm going to offer again for people who have questions for Ann. If you would like, please go to readytalk.com, click Join Meeting, and use the access code 7766805. And for those of you who are already online, if you have a question for Ann, please use the blue online chat button to submit your questions or question now. But it might we might just have one more question. Hang on one second. I see a little thing spinning here. 1 second. So So one final question I do have for you is where can we find your articles?
The two main websites where you can find my work is healthline.com and care2.com. But if you just do a Google search with my name, a lot of stuff will pop up. Just follow the links.
And would you mind?
My work these days is on Healthline. So.
Okay. Would you mind spelling your name for people so they could find you?
Yes. It's Ann with no E, A-N-N, and my last name is Pietrangelo.
All right, perfect. Well, that looks like that's all the questions, and that's all the time we have for now. So for the listeners, thank you for joining us, and if you missed any part of this teleconference, it will be replayed on msfocusradio.org and available on demand. Follow MS Focus on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for times and access information. We do have more teleconferences coming, and the series will continue March 26th when Dr. Khatri discusses how to be a leader of your healthcare team, and we hope you'll join us then. Our sincere thanks to our sponsors for their support of the National MS Education and Awareness Month, to all our callers for your participation, and especially to Ann Pietrangelo. Thank you so much for the time you spent to prepare, and thank you so much for sharing this information with us.
Thank you, Chris. It was my pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, and good night.